Good morning. I want to begin by acknowledging and thanking my teachers, Jane Schneider and Peter Schneider, and by telling you that this talk is just to encourage you in your practice. I also want to thank and acknowledge Greg Fain. He's been a teacher of mine over the years, and this is how he starts his talks. I have practiced Zen a lot less than many of the people who are listening to me right now. This talk is just some thoughts that I've had based on the time that I've spent practicing, and that's all. So I'm not preaching, right? I'm just thinking out loud, sort of. Not least because I wasn't able to compile many notes or actually write out a talk. So this is somewhere between some notes and a rough draft of a talk. So without further ado, I wanted to talk some about compassion, but also the approach to compassion that I think Zen encourages, or at least the Zen approach to compassion. And I'm going to start by reading a koan, which is case 54 in the Book of Serenity. It's also case 89 in the Blue Cliff Record, and it's case 105 in the Shinji Shobogenzo. So it's important, I guess, or it's popular anyway. And I've always liked it, so I hope you do too. So from the Book of Serenity, the case. Yunyan asked Daowu, "What does the Bodhisattva of great compassion do with so many hands and eyes?" Daowu said, "It's like someone reaching back for the pillow at night." Yunyan said, "I understand." Daowu said, "How do you understand?" Yunyan said, "All over the body is hands and eyes." Daowu said, "You said a lot there, but you only got 80%. Yunyan said, "What about you, elder brother?" Daowu said, "Throughout the body is hands and eyes." Yunyan asked Daowu, "What does the Bodhisattva of great compassion do with so many hands and eyes?" Daowu said, "It's like someone reaching back for the pillow at night." Yunyan said, "I understand." Daowu said, "How do you understand?" Yunyan said, "All over the body is hands and eyes." Daowu said, "You said a lot there, but you only got 80%. Yunyan said, "What about you, elder brother?" Daowu said, "Throughout the body is hands and eyes." So just a little bit of background, if anyone did not already have it, is so Yunyan and Daowu were Dharma brothers, and they studied with Yun Men, I think. And Yunyan, for a while, was just really, really slow on the uptake in terms of getting it. So there's actually a anecdote. I'm not sure if they called this a koan, where Daowu is listening to Yunyan talking to the master in Dokusan or whatever, which, you know, just setting aside, it's kind of messed up to eavesdrop on someone's Dokusan, but and Daowu is so frustrated hearing Yunyan just not give good answers to the questions that he bites his thumb hard enough to draw blood. It's like, wow, it's pretty judgy. But eventually, Yunyan ends up being the teacher to Dongshan, who ends up being one of the two founders, I guess, of the Soto Zen school in China, which then transmitted to Japan through Dogen, which then transmitted to America through Shunryu Suzuki and Peter and Jane Schneider. So Yun Yun eventually got it. And also, I have this. So I think I've heard other teachers say, and I is if Yun Yun had said throughout the body is hands and eyes first, I still think Dao would have said you said a lot, but you only got 80%. But it doesn't really matter. And one of the reasons why I like this koan is because it's it's simple, but it still needs reflection. So the great bodhisattva of compassion, or the bodhisattva of great compassion, Avalokiteshvara, um, often depicted as having 1,000 arms and hands, and in the palm of every hand is an eye, and every hand is also holding a different tool. So even though Avalokiteshvara is personified as a discrete being, I think that it's not too much of a stretch to conceive of the whole body that they're talking about as, well, all of us and the whole universe. That's a teaching that I've heard a lot, that we're all one Buddha body. And I think that's what they're getting at when they say throughout the body is hands and eyes, or all over the body is hands and eyes. And the several translations I looked at are all really, really close. So this feels a little straightforward, which I, again, appreciate. But one of the translations says, instead of throughout the body and hands and eyes, the whole body is just hands and eyes. And the hands are reaching back for the pillow. When you're expressing compassion, I think that I've made much of what compassion is, or at least that's a pitfall to overthink it. And I think that's what Reb was driving at when he was discussing compassion in three different levels. The small compassion is what will burn a person out when they try too hard. And this, similarly to a lot of different ideas or teachings in Zen, is appealing to me because I am lazy. And I have discovered that a lot of Buddhism, you don't have to try very hard to get it. And just as an aside, I realize how grandiose that sounds to even so, to some extent, to whatever extent someone can get something like Buddhism. Again, some thoughts that I've had after practicing are this. So I think that the reason why actual compassion is so easy and effortless, as they describe someone reaching for a pillow at night, the person's not even awake. It's just happens. A need arises and the response arises just like that. So it's easy for me because I've noticed it'll actually take more effort to resist an impulse, like picking up a piece of garbage or something like that. And I'm not tooting my own horn. I've put a lot of effort into resisting compassionate action. But the impulse to meet distress with compassion doesn't require any thought at all. It just happens of its own accord. And I think that the Zen approach to compassion is just practicing noticing this impulse and staying out of the way. Staying out of the way with our small minds. Because they talk about in Zen big mind, or just mind in a very big universal sense. And then also, like, our mind is in our thinking, the limited small thinking that we think of usually when we say mind. And as a quick aside, I've noticed that there seems to be a prejudice against the small mind or just the thinking mind in a lot of Zen writing, and there's a distinct bias in favor of the heart. But here's my sort of bone to pick is that we get these teachings from Chinese and Japanese, and the word that we translate as mind and the word that we translate as heart is the same. It's shin. And this seems very sensible that mind and heart, and I would add the gut as well, are all just different expressions or the different aspects of this like continuum or spectrum or whatever that is one of the sense perceptions, I guess. You know, like eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Uh, One of the senses, like the five senses that we learn in grade school, and then also this sixth one, which again, mind or heart. So when we don't analyze it too much, um, compassion is a lot easier, and that uh, I think that that's the approach that Zen takes for the same reason that the teaching of thusness is such a big deal in Zen. So I know I've heard Jane for sure say multiple times that she believes our natural state is to be compassionate. And I've often, when I overanalyze this stuff, think like, oh no, well, the Shinshin Ming says the great way is not difficult, just avoid picking and choosing. But if I pick compassion, aren't I, you know what I mean? Like, and I love the word sophomoric when people make arguments like that, or like, oh, you desire to be free of desires. That's a desire. You know what I mean? So I like the word sophomoric. I think that's really, really accurate. And to me, it recounts or recalls how I was like sophomore year of high school, where just like, and I think this is common amongst a lot of people, maybe more so with boys. Maybe that's fair, or maybe it's not fair, but kind of where I'm thinking right now, or just to make argument for argument's sake, or like get the teacher off on a tangent, or you know what I mean. So, anyways, I need to remember not to give up on something that resonates deep within me just because a sophomore boy would be able to make some logical, convincing argument about it, because that guy's still alive inside. I'm getting off topic, I think. So, the teaching of suchness or thusness, as far as I can tell, is more or less the same as saying naturalness, or when you're not trying too hard, it's just the way we return to. It's a place that we began. So for a while, it seems like, at least it seemed for me anyway, Zen practice is like if our mind is like a petri dish, and all these like ideas and delusions are like bacteria that grow on it and then kind of like cover up the bottom of the petri dish. That Zen practice is to like throw antibiotics on that culture of bacteria and try and like clear it up through force. And at other times, it's more like the bacteria will clear away of its own accord as long as I stop feeding it. So if I can notice it's growing and then understand that it's growing because I'm feeding it, then I stop feeding it, and it kind of clears away on its own. Um, so what I'm driving at is when we're practicing Zen and working towards understanding and holding the question, what is Buddhism? um, and letting this brain bacteria, clear away, what we get to is thusness. It's, the way we are without artifice or design, just ta ta ta. That includes, among several aspects we could identify when we go ahead and use our minds to put concepts into words, includes compassion. And so that's why compassion is a value, or in Zen, is because ultimately it is an outcropping of this naturalness, and this naturalness is also the place of no suffering. And Buddhism kind of began with the question: what is suffering? Why do we suffer? Can we get rid of suffering? How do we get rid of suffering? And then Buddha's answer to that was the Four Noble Truths, that, yeah, suffering, there is an end. Or, yeah, anyways. I forgot the Four Noble Truths. Oh boy. So I would like to close just by saying that this this notion that we should listen to our heart more than our mind, it kind of rubs me the wrong way, but I also get it. And again, if mind and heart and gut are part of the same thing, then it's kind of like, is there something to prefer over the other when we talk about heart and mind? And, well, yes and no. But we're what's the word? We're conditioned to put so much emphasis on the mind, the brain mind, that, yeah, actually, it is important to broaden our focus, and also kind of, lean a little bit more towards the heart mind. And that if there's some disagreement about what we've been reflecting on, or some understanding we're examining, then it's not like we should pick one of those and ignore the others, but rather we should just keep going, keep holding that question or that understanding in our awareness, and appreciating it, appreciating the question or the inquiry itself. If there's harmony amongst the various aspects of our mind and heart, our shin, as it is, we should still keep holding the question. But I think it's a good sign, anyways. So, and this touches on that concept that probably was originally what hooked me into Buddhism in the first place: the notion that we figure it out for ourselves. We don't believe things just. This is from the sutta. I can't remember, but it's the one where Buddha basically gets asked by the people, like, how do we know who to believe, essentially, because they always had teachers saying, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about, you need to listen to me. And then Buddha said, essentially, don't believe things for all these lists of reasons, but essentially examine for yourself whatever it is. And if it becomes apparent to you that such and such activity is in accord with wisdom, that it creates less suffering, not more, then do it. And otherwise, let go. So stay lazy, friends. If we just chill and stop trying to overthink things like I do, then what happens is we return to compassion. And it's not really like returning, because actually we've never left. that's really all I can say for now. And I need to say that a lot of what I said just now is kind of like a remix of what I've heard Jane say. So thank you, Jane, for everything you've taught us on compassion, and I hope I did it justice.
Your mic's
So
muted, Jane.
yeah, if um, mm,
Keep pounding the wall until you can't do it anymore, until you're truly convinced, body and mind, that the thinking won't open anything. And the more you do that, and when you give up, it won't be giving up the guy who thinks, it'll just be giving up the guy who aspires to get something. And when you stop trying to overthink, but I see no problem with overthinking. I actually think it's a good thing, because if you don't use all of your talents when you're trying to break through the stubbornness of character, if you don't use everything in your arsenal, then it just won't be enough. So think yourself until you almost can't think anymore, and uh, let compassion bloom. It's not something you do or get. It's in you, and it will bloom when you stop overthinking. But I think for it to even get that far, you have to overthink till you can't overthink anymore. So use everything in your arsenal, whatever it is, to understand.
so I should I should I should stop overthinking, not because I am, holding it back or holding it, at arm's length, but because I've done it so much that I'm just essentially, worn out.
And you do it so much because it's one of your talents. So just keep overthinking until there's no reason to anymore. Anyway,
Sounds
don't worry about getting rid of this or that quality, because when you really don't need it, it'll just drop off of you. And right now, as long as you feel like you need it, you'll keep doing it. And I say, go for it. It's good. Use everything you're talented in. Use everything you can until you feel like you really can't. And then just let it go. I'm sorry, did I interrupt you, Mike? Pardon me.
I think Mike was just letting you know the mic was muted.
Oh,
But
you mean I said
oh,
all
Mark
that?
Morris. Oh, okay. So I actually saw Sandy raise her hand, and then I saw Mark Morris raise his hand.
What? You mean all that I said nobody heard?
No, 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 no. I was saying like right at the beginning is when Mike sort of got your attention, but I think Sandy wanted to say something.
I I wanted to say thank you for your musings and for would be willing to share those with us. Uh, One of the things you talked about, is the heart, um, and I just wanted to say that there's many instances where people who have had heart transplants, they bring memories. Um, they find they're having memories of the person who donated the organ, and the scientists now are starting to believe that the mind is not just here in the head, but it's throughout the body, that there's memory stored and things to draw upon. So there was a lot to what you said about, the heart and the mind and all of it. It is connected. Everything within our body is interconnected, just like everything outside our body is interconnected with others. So thank you for bringing that up. I really appreciate it.
So
Mike?
I see Mike's hand came up first, and maybe Jane was right, and he did actually.
No. Mark was ahead of me. Let him go first.
Okie dokie. All right. So, Mark.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chris and Jane. Thank you very much. It was really interesting when you were talking about the mind, the heart, and the gut. It reminded me of a comedian in the 80s that had a line in his stand-up that said, the other day I was thinking that the brain is the most important organ in the body. And then I thought, wait a minute, what's telling me that? So I, it reminded me of that. So thank you for taking me back to the Comedy Store in the 80s. And that, and the connection between, just that, the mind, the gut, and the heart, it's all on the same plate, and it's all the same plate. It's all the same ball. I don't know. Anyway, be careful of what's telling you what's most important.
Thank you. I like that. It's almost like it's, or at least it's similar to, anyway, it reminded me of. I never got good at surfing, and sometimes when I would be trying to, there'd be this voice in my head. I would be in my head saying, like, criticizing myself, saying, "You're not doing it right. That's not how you do it." And then like one day I just noticed, it's like, wait a minute. I don't know how to surf. So why am I listening to myself, like dump on my efforts? Like that doesn't make any sense. I don't know what I'm doing. So why should I, anyways. So yeah, I like
and you
that
probably
whole,
weren't entering the board on your head. So your feet probably had a better opinion of whether you could surf or not, right?
yes. Okay, now Mike.
There we go. First of all, thank you for your talk. It reminded me of how hard we have to work to find what we already have. Because I've always felt that compassion is a natural attribute of being human, and that we train ourselves not to be compassionate because we think it's a sign of weakness. And so we have to untrain ourselves and realize that compassion is us. That we work so hard to be compassionate when all we have to do is just just calm ourselves down, just be in the moment. As I've said a million times, be here now. But that compassion really is what we are. And that we react to the immediate situation, the conditions we encounter. We don't go out there and try and save the world. We just, deal with what we encounter. And it also made me think of a line from an author that I really enjoyed in high school, even before I found out that he really wasn't truthful in what he said. Was Carlos Castaneda's had a line, "You follow the path with heart." And that's part of compassion. You know what to do. You know where to go. You know what to do. It's just, you got to have the courage to realize, hey, I already have this. I know how to use it. And that's what I'm here to do. But I liked your talk, man. Thank you.
Mark has his hand up.
Yeah, real quick, I just wanted to add on to what you said, Mike, that really just I don't know how or why, but somehow sitting lots of zazen helps. So more zazen, Chris.
Mark has something to say.
Hi, good to see everybody. Great talk, Chris. You really opened up a lot of areas. Gut, mind, heart. We got a lot of things going on here. I've been noticing lately, because I've been having many struggles, and I've noticed that the more struggles I have, the more efforts I have to make, it's what I've seen that people have suffered beyond what's the normal event, people who accept the suffering, people who use the suffering, it happens. I can see this with students that have come from Ukraine who were being, hiding in basements and things like this, that there's a real commitment to life. And I can see them myself as that the people who really open up to compassion, they need to suffer. They have to acknowledge the suffering. They have to acknowledge that in some place the suffering has broken them. And that's where the greatest compassion seems to come from. When you yourself, your pride, your thinking, your gut, or your heart, it's been broken in some very, very powerful way. And I don't think you can really understand what true compassion is until you understand true suffering, until you really feel that you've been broken so far that you'll never be the same. Because our own sameness, our old sameness is rather comes from a rather stiff society that gives a lot of lip service about compassion. But there are people that find it through religion and just through everyday life. But I think great compassion really is seated. It's seated completely in the heart, and it's allowing the heart to come through that break in your mind, your ego, and it radiates and it touches everybody. Everybody who needs this, it'll touch them. And people who have broken like this, they understand, they can look at people and see it and feel it. And that's where I'll rest my little talk here. And you're getting there, Chris. You're really understanding it.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak up?
Well, there's always next Saturday.
I'd like to talk also, Chris.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that was nice. That was very nice. Oh, okay, so I guess anything else? Okay.